Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to part 13 of my Joseph Losey season. We're going to 1962 again, and this is Eve, or Eva, or The Devil's Woman, starring Jeanne Moreau, Stanley Baker, based on the novel by James Hadley Chase, who did wrote No Orchids for Miss Blandish, which is also one of my favourite Indicator releases, and this is the Indicator Blu-ray, which has 4 cuts of the film. Because strangely enough, it's a Joseph Losey film that has various stories about the cuts. So we have the longest known version, which is 126 minutes, the original theatrical European release, which is 109 minutes, the alternative Devil's Woman version, and we also have the 126 minute with the optional extended ending. Now, this film was originally, or the adaptation of the novel was originally going to be done by Jean-Luc Godard, but he wasn't very popular on working or having Jeanne Moreau in the film for some reason, so he pulled out, and then Joseph Losey was suggested. So again, this is another one of the films by Joseph Losey that wasn't originally going to be a Joseph Losey film. Now, as I say in just about every one of these videos, Joseph Losey wasn't a fan of the script. He fought with the producers. He didn't get on with the cameraman. I mean, you do get a feeling over all these videos that I've done with Joseph Losey that he was maybe a little bit difficult to work with. I know he obviously went through a terrible time with the blacklisting, but he does seem to fight with a lot of writers and producers and cameramen especially to get what he wants, and music as well. He originally wanted 30 Billie Holiday songs, but they only got permission for 3. Michel Legrand finally did the music. So the original cut of the film, Losey only approved 2 of these cuts. So the original length of the film was 155 minutes. Jeanne Moreau kind of persuaded Losey to cut the film due to a preview in Paris, I believe. So Losey cut it to 135 minutes. But obviously subsequently it's 126 minutes or 109 minutes or 108 minutes, which Losey didn't approve. The film, I have to admit, is not one of my favourite Loseys. It's probably fairly near the bottom as far as one of my favourites. It stars, as I say, Stanley Baker as a Welsh novelist. In the novel he is American, but obviously they changed it to Welsh for Stanley Baker. And he is in Venice celebrating the film version of his book, which is directed by Giorgio Albertazzi, who was in Last Year in Marienbad, probably most famously. And his, Stanley Baker's girlfriend, Verna Lisi. And he comes across Jeanne Moreau and becomes infatuated with Jeanne Moreau, who seems to be only interested in money and goes around with man to man, and is only interested in the money, but for some reason Stanley Baker is infatuated with her. When you're engaged, or planning to be engaged with Losey. So that's one of the things that feels a bit odd. Obviously, it is cut, so it does feel disjointed. There is a kind of really interesting kind of sadomasochistic kind of relationship between the two, and interestingly, it's the woman that's in the position of power and the position of control. Usually it's the man that is in the position of control, and it's the woman that is obsessed with him, as far as kind of sadomasochism goes. Moreau is very good as the very cold, manipulative woman. I mean, I think her performance in Jacques Demy's Bay of Angels, not a completely similar character, but a fairly similar character, is far more effective than in this film. One of the problems with the film is, well, for me anyway, Stanley Baker perhaps is a little miscast, but also the big problem for me is you just don't really care about the characters. Nobody, I mean, again, I don't have a problem with films with characters that aren't nice people, as long as they're kind of interesting. Whereas there's nobody in the film that's that engaging. One of the strengths of Losey has always been his use of locations in Venice, and locations in and around Venice are wonderful. Obviously, Nicholas Roeg would make Venice a little bit more famous in colour in the early 70s with Don't Look Now. But this is a wonderful view of Venice with a crisp black and white cinematography, and obviously the traits of Losey, mirrors, close-ups of art and objects, masks, is in this film as well as it is in quite a few of Losey's films. But overall, probably due to the fact the original cut was 155 minutes and now it's like 109, or the director's cut it's 126. I've watched the director's cut and the 109 version, and I wouldn't necessarily say not the director's cut, but the longest cut available, the 126 minute, I wouldn't say it's any huge improvement over the 109 minute version, because again, for me, it's just not that interesting of a film, again, because the characters just really aren't that engaging. We'll maybe come to another film fairly shortly that I have the same kind of problem with, which is probably much more of a popular film than this one is. And also, this highlights to me Losey. Obviously, Losey wanted and saw himself as on par with Antonioni and Fellini, perhaps not Bergman, but certainly he viewed himself as a creator of kind of high art. That's what he wanted to be, that's what he kind of viewed himself as. And personally, that's where, for me, he gets himself into a little bit of trouble. Because I think Losey is really at the height of his powers, doing kind of plot-driven, character-driven films, and the more, if you want to call it, arty or, you know, philosophical side of art house cinema. Personally, I don't think Losey is at his best when he does that or tries that. And for me, this is a perfect example of, I mean, again, this wasn't supposed to be Losey's film, so you have to take that into consideration. And yes, it was supposed to be 155 minutes, but to be honest, the thought of watching these characters for 155 minutes, I think would be too much, certainly for me. I mean, I know there might be people watching this that absolutely love this film, and that's absolutely fair enough. I love plenty of films that other people just don't. But again, for me, this is Losey not playing to his strengths, I don't think. But again, that's just my opinion, and my opinion is not fact. The indicator release, as you'd expect, is wonderful, apart from the 4 cuts of the film that you get. There is a Joseph Losey 9-minute piece from 1967 when he's talking about the thing. The film on French television. There's another piece from 1972 where Jeanne Moreau talks about the film. There's a BAHP interview with Reginald Beck, which is 126 minutes from 1987, which is an audio recording featuring the editor who edited quite a few Losey films. And then there's a 24-minute appreciation from 2020 with the wonderful Neil Sinyard. And then there's a really fantastic 16-minute piece from 2020 which compares all the versions of the film. So again, a really wonderful indicator release of an interesting film by Losey, but again, for me, it doesn't really connect with me, and it probably is, as I say, near the bottom. If I was doing my favourite Losey films, it wouldn't be that high, if I'm being perfectly honest. You can't like absolutely every film that everybody's ever made ever. So thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you'll join me for the next film in Losey's this Losey series, which is probably his most famous and what a lot of people think is his best. Personally, I don't, but that's just me. But it's certainly up there with his best. So thanks very much for watching again. Please leave comments below if you've seen Eve or Eva or The Devil's Woman, the 126-minute version, the 109-minute version, the 108-minute version, or the 126-minute version with the extended ending. And hopefully you'll join me again, as I say, for the next episode of Joseph Losey. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell.